It's time to get sexy, so watch Secular Sexuality live Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTSS and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callsex.
That's right, folks. Blasphemy abounds because it's time for another episode of The Nonprofits, the show where we discuss news and topics of the day from a skeptical humanist perspective. My name is Secular Rarity, and with me today are my two favorite Brits, only because I don't have two other Brits to say that to. But we're going to start with Richard. How are you, man? It's good to see you back on here.
Yeah, it's great. I always enjoy being on here. I love working with you. I am very old and my mind is a little faded, but I think this is the first time I've got to work with Phoebe. So I'm very, very excited about that.
That's right. And up next is my number two favorite Brit. Sorry, Phoebe. Me and Richard, we've got a long history of fighting in the ring. But Phoebe, it is awesome to have you on here. We are super excited. How are you today?
Well, I'm wonderful. What I will say is that the third Brit that floats around the ACA will be very disappointed that she is now third. Not many people put Katie, third, but she's now fallen behind Richard and me. So moving up in the world.
Look, in fairness, Katie's not here. I mean, sorry, we just gotta go with the people that show up.
We are that fickle.
That's right. But with that,
liability runs wild around here.
With that being said, folks, this show is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the separation of religion and government and promoting positive atheism. Today, we have some interesting topics to talk about. First up, Pope Watch. The Vatican is putting the brakes on some German reformers. Then we've got 100 plus Florida churches are suing to leave the United Methodist Church. Then we're going to go over to Texas, where an education official is thinking about changing slavery to involuntary relocation. Something tells me they might be missing something there. And finally, to wrap us up, we hear about OANN being dropped from their last major TV carrier. With all that, folks, as you know, every one of these shows, links to today's topics and the news we discuss are available in the description right below this video. And remember that if you want to come prepared to the show, you can actually check out the Nonprofits Facebook fan page every Friday night for a list of the articles ahead of time. So why not do that and just come here ready to talk about them? Richard, I think you've been watching the Pope lately. You want to take us into this first one and tell us what's going on over there in Germany?
I have indeed been watching the Pope. I'm like, God, I sneak under his bed covers every night and just have a quick peek. This article is from Euronews and was published on July 22nd of this year. The article tells us that the Vatican on Thursday slammed the brakes on a German progressive movement that aims to give lay Catholics a say in doctrinal matters such as homosexuality and women priests, saying this risks causing a schism in the universal church. The movement, a regular gathering of equal number of bishops and ordinary German Catholics, has been outspoken in its demand for the Vatican to let priests marry, let women become priests, and for the church to bless same-sex relationships. Now, none of these suggestions to me are bad. Priests marrying, women priests, and blessing same-sex relationships. However, this is the Catholic Church we are talking about. And to be honest, this is something I'm torn on too. But I'm going to come back to that in the next article. In the meantime, I'm going to throw it open to you two to see what you've got to say.
As someone who is nice and European, I've watched Euronews on television, I've read Euronews articles, and the article itself reads very much like you would expect a French news article to read. It's nicely balanced, it gives you what you would expect, it sets out well, Germans are being Germans. Well, the Pope is being, the Pope. And there you go. That's the way the article runs. But the flavor that I got from this whole thing was just how wealthy German churches are, or German Catholic churches are, because they have the church tax, which rakes in billions for the church. And one of the dioceses in Germany is wealthier than the Vatican itself. So I don't actually see this as, some grand fight about minutiae of issues, no matter how important those issues are. It's a straight up power struggle between two very wealthy people going, hey, I want control of this. No. I want control of this. And they're going, and that's where we are with this at the moment. But the article from Euronews is about as balanced as, you're ever going to expect in something from France or the Low Countries.
I think that's a really good point that you just made there, Phoebe. I truly this read to me more so about the money than it was about a bunch of Catholic bishops and parishioners just suddenly realizing that maybe homosexuals aren't disgusting sinners, right? It doesn't seem to me as if they like woke up and suddenly like changed, massively on that. It's always weird how like billions of dollars can make a whole organization like change things for them. It kind of feels reminiscent. Maybe I've got my history wrong. Has the Catholic Church been through something like this before, where like a group of them in one section of the world was like, we don't really like this anymore. We kind of want to do our own thing. It seems familiar, but maybe it's that's
maybe
my memory.
It's just flavors of religions around the world. Maybe
right. I've always wondered why God just doesn't come down and just fix this for everybody. Wouldn't that make it so much easier? Like,
give everybody lots of money. Just give everybody lots of money.
I will take that one. But Richard, what else was going on? There were a couple of other articles. You said you were a little conflicted about something. What's conflicting you, man?
Yeah, that was. I was going to come back to that in a later article because we actually touch on that in a later article. I want to return just a moment to what Phoebe brought up and what you've just touched upon as well. Germany's quite a liberal country in general, and there doesn't seem to be much kind of intolerance towards homosexuals and the idea about women priests there. And this seems perfectly understandable. What a lot of people might be surprised about from Germany is that it is compulsory to pay taxes to the church. And for a country that's as liberal as it is, for it to be compulsory to pay taxes to the Catholic Church, to the point where you've actually got to go through a process of opting out if you don't want to, and making yourself stand out, I think that is very much standout from this article for me. And I think a lot of people may be surprised at that. The article does touch on the doctrinal issues, so I want to touch on that a little bit. And conservative Catholics claim to be worried that this might lead to a splinter in the church. And let's face it, doctrinal disagreement, as you said, Secular, isn't a new thing. It's been happening since before we even had a Bible. Just let that sink in for 1 minute when people are talking about people not being true Christians. This has been going on since the very, very early Jewish sects that first made up Christianity, when they were arguing with each other. It shaped the Bible we have. I think we're lucky in this day and age that those considered as having unorthodox opinions aren't executed. Not by the Catholic Church, anyway. Not yet.
Yeah. That's definitely progress.
Well, coming from England, knowing all about the history of, Bloody Mary, as she was known, and the reprisals under Henry VIII and the Reformation and stuff, it was pretty brutal if you didn't have the correct religion. So if you were a Catholic under Henry VIII, you were stripped of a lot of your money, a lot of your status. And if you weren't a Catholic under Mary I, you had a good chance of having your head blown off by being burnt at the stake. So we've moved in quite a progressive way, I'd say, to this day and age,
It
where we can
wasn't
just
just the
discuss it.
Catholics either in the Reformation. They I touched upon this a couple of weeks ago on the non-profits, and the Anabaptists, who were a group of Protestants, were reviled by even other Protestants, and they were murdered in the thousands.
So, do either of you think, because this is one of the things that kind of was ringing throughout my head as I was reading these, was part of me says, hey, this may be a moment where this leads to such a break between the German Catholic churches and the Vatican itself, that this could potentially weaken the overall hold that the Catholic Church has on a lot of different areas around the world. Do y'all think this is something that's on the horizon here, or is this just going to be another super wealthy organization with some slightly better policies, but still at the end of the day, not really being for, humans and stuff?
It feels too much like, to me, it's like saying, well, JP Morgan is arguing with itself whether JP or Morgan are going to be, doing this, that, and the other. So JP wants to go in one way, Morgan wants to go another way, but they're not going to, destroy their hold on the financial system that they've got. It's like Goldman and Sachs. Goldman and Sachs, they aren't going to, they can have disagreements, but, Goldman Sachs is still going to, be there as the juggernaut. As much as I'd like to see a diminishment in the overall influence and power of the Catholic Church, and I would really like them to stop claiming that they have 1.5 billion followers, because that's one of those things that if you add up all of the numbers of people who are these religions claim, there are 4 times more claimed followers of all these religions than there are people on earth. So I would like them to stop doing that as starters, but then I'm just a pedant. And yeah, I don't think it's going to make the biggest difference. I think it's, in all fairness, I think it's the old Holy Roman Empire arguing with itself.
Richard, what do you think?
Yeah, the statement that the church made was that they feared that the church would weaken and rot and die if this went ahead. And I don't think this will happen. I'm with Phoebe on this. I think it's been such splintering in the past that's allowed Christianity to last as long as it has. And we shouldn't forget that the Catholic Church isn't against change. I think the problem, what stands out for me, the nuance here, is that the problem is that it's someone other than the policymakers who've suggested to change. And that's what's really getting under the skin, the fact that it's not come from the Pope or the Vatican itself, and it's someone else who's suggesting that these ideas might come to the fore.
I say, on that point, Richard, do you think that there's a fear that they could be seen as too Church of England if they were to give laity and rank and file clergy, a say? Because the Church of England has a tricameral way that it makes its decisions. So it has its House of Laity, it has its House of Clergy, and then it has its House of Bishops. And do you think that there's possibly some fear that it could look too Church of England?
Yeah, I think that's possibly part of it. I think the powers that be don't want to be seen to be relinquishing their power to the common folk. It's after all, it's the Pope who is directly in communion with God, who makes the decisions in the Catholic Church, and to give the commoner let's not forget this is a 1,500-year-old institution, if not more. But since really, as we know it now, it's been going on for about 1,500 years. The formative years were when they were getting the shit together. So I don't think you can quite count that. They've got a lot of history to kind of cling on to and claim authorship. over all of this.
Yeah, was there something in one of the other articles that you wanted to highlight real quick?
Who, me?
Yeah, you had said there was another article that you wanted to talk about. That's okay. I think Phoebe had
Yeah.
something on.
No, that was the second. That was the second article. The second segment. I was going to come back to on the second segment and kind of link all this together. On this one though, I don't think that. I think that if we give it 20 or 30 years, some of these changes will start creeping into the Catholic Church anyway. I think, as we've said already in this article, this is a power play, and it's a financial power play that's happening. And I don't think the churches, have already said, is against change in and of itself. And I think now that these things have been suggested, if the church can position itself correctly, gain the upper hand, I think we'll probably see these reforms coming in anyway. I don't think the church has any choice but to change with the way that kind of we are progressing, thankfully, after 2,000 years of Christianity, to having Christians who actually have a conscience and take the models from somewhere other than the Bible.
Yeah, I think, and I think both of you kind of touched on it. I think one of the reasons that this is kind of problematic for the Vatican is because it does seem to usurp some of their authority a little bit. And from where I sit, as somebody that's not a part of this religion or any of them, I have this innate problem with this. You know, uh, rights donated out to us from on high, right? Like the idea that, oh, we can only make progress when the people at the top holding the leash give us just a little bit more leeway. And I do think that this smacks of that. There's just something, and surprise, surprise, but there's something about the Vatican higher ups that really like that whole control thing. Again, maybe my history is a little messed up here, but I feel like this is something we've seen before. Phoebe, any other thoughts? Or
It was very interesting to see the different flavors of the way that this was portrayed, particularly by the Catholic News Agency. The Catholic News Agency, they really did go very heavy and very hard as to this is the death, this is the end. Stop! We've been trying to stop you for a very long time. Stop now! Stop now! Stop now! Don't let this experiment get out of the lab, kind of thing. And it was very interesting just how they structured their article as well, because they structured their article with an attack on the German Catholics at the start, an attack on the German Catholics at the end, and buried the German Catholics bit right in the middle, so that you have to really look for it in the article to actually find out where exactly their point of view is. Because if you're just a casual reader that, skims the first few lines, oh, there you go. And the last thing that you'll read if you read the whole article is another attack on them. So it was very interesting just how heavy and how gung-ho the Catholic News Agency article was in going, no, stop now, this is bad. And it was very interesting just to see the level of structural propaganda that was being pushed in that article.
Yeah, and again, just another good point. I think this Pope that's currently the head right now, Pope Francis. Again, I always will not stop pointing out the fact that, I think I said that well, when Francis was first put into that position, there were a lot of people that thought this was a really progressive, reform focused individual. And I think this is just another example that is not what the Catholic Church, they are not focused on that. They are not interested in becoming more modern, or honestly just less shitty. Because for goodness sake, y'all, for goodness sake, we can talk about all the other ones, but let the priests marry. I mean, come on. Like, this is just freaking ridiculous that something like that is causing such a rift that again, as Richard pointed out, they said that they thought this was going to lead to the withering and dying and rotting of the institution as a whole. I mean, that it absolutely ridiculous to me that we are in 2022 and we are still having to have some of these discussions. But again, that's what the focus of the Catholic Church is. If they're going to dole out rights, it's going to be on their damn time, and nobody else is going to tell them otherwise.
Absolutely.
Richard, what do you think? Wrap us up, and we'll take a look at what's going on in Florida. But what are your final thoughts on this?
Yeah. Pope Francis, or Frankie Baby, as I like to refer to him as.
Much better.
Hope Frankie Baby won.
That's his Christian
No,
name.
they old Frankie Baby. This is one of those things where you always hear it when you've got somebody new coming in and they're either too conservative or too progressive, and he was touted as one of the progressive ones. And at the end of the day, unless he's one man in a whole kind of machine of authority, and despite him being, from a theological point of view, the one under God who should be making the decisions, that's not how this machine works. You don't have him sitting there just giving his opinion and then everything coming in. It goes through counselors and the publicity machine, and that's been made very clear in these articles. Is this something that is a good thing? From the German kind of splinter group, yes, it's a good thing that they're talking about these things. Is it all about the freedoms of people? No, it's a power game. And that's the long and the short of it. And, it's going to be one of these things that I think we're going to probably coming back to over the next few years on the non-profits and looking at again and seeing how this plays out.
Yeah. And I think all of us, again, like we said, we would all agree that the kind of path forward that this these German churches are kind of pushing is definitely something we can get behind. Maybe we're just not going about it the exact right way, and hopefully there will actually be some progress. Because again, it's 2022. I'm just completely baffled that we're still having these conversations. But again, it is the Catholic Church. So
as I say, we're in the third decade of the third millennium. How are we not further forwards on these issues?
Yeah, I know. But
because dusty old books.
Yeah, they are still around, unfortunately, and people still like the words in them, even though a lot of them are pretty terrible, I think. But with that, we want to make sure that we give a nice big thank you to all of our veteran viewers and every new viewer out there as well, because without you, we wouldn't have gotten over 10,000 subscribers. So thank you so much. And if you are watching us now and you haven't subscribed yet, just do it already. I mean, this is ridiculous. Again, we're in 2022. Why haven't you subscribed to the nonprofits? Once you've done that, though, just make sure to hit the like button and ring that bell so you always know when a new nonprofits episode premieres. But I'll give you a hint. Sundays at 3 p.m. And then while you're at it, after you've done those simple things, why not just share the link with your friends, family members, coworkers, neighbors, dogs, squirrels? I feel like I'm just listing off animals now. Anyone and everyone, though, just get that link out there, and let's get the word out there too, so we can start helping with those fundraisers. And finally, are you aware that the atheist community of Austin has another YouTube channel? Well, if you're not, I'll tell you about it here, because the Atheist Experience Network is a channel where you can find all the ACA shows in podcast form. Just subscribe at tiny.cc/AEN podcast to listen to episodes of the nonprofits, the Atheist Experience, Secular Sexuality, and all of the other ACA shows. So don't miss a single episode. Get on that. Again, come on, folks. Third millennium, third decade. I think there was another third, but I might have
Third year,
it.
The third decade,
third
the third
thank
millennium.
you. Perfect. And get on that stuff already. But while y'all are doing that, Phoebe, you're going to tell us about some stuff going on in Florida. It sounds like we're going from Germany to Florida. What a change. So
Well, it's Florida. What did you expect? Lawsuits, lawsuits, and more lawsuits. It seems to be the American flavor of doing things nowadays. If you have a cause and it's gonna, destroy a minority in some way, shape, or form, or cement your position to be able to dislike and discriminate against a minority, lawsuits, lawsuits, lawsuits seem to be the way forwards. And what's happening in the moment is the United Methodist Church in Florida is currently schisming, and about 100 or so of the more conservative, shall we say, with a small c, parts of the church are suing to leave the overall umbrella of the United Methodist Church because they don't like ordaining LGBT rights, they don't like ordaining same-sex marriages, they don't like that some other parts of the United Methodist Church have decided that it's a good idea to have openly gay clergy, and they're now going into court and they're saying, well, you're being a bit slow with letting us leave, and we're going to take all of our property with us, so we're going to take the money that comes with us as well. So we're back to the good old American, dollar bill coming back to say, well, what are we actually doing? It does, though, have this way of feeling like you've got parts of a CEO board. So the C levels of a board, and you've got the CEO saying, well, we're going to go one thing, and you've got the president saying we're going to go the other thing, and they're saying, well, okay, we'll let you leave, but you've got to go and follow this. And then the CEO goes, no, I've got all these people that want to go now, and I'm going to take all these workers with me, and they're going to leave on my terms, and I'll see you in court over it. And it feels very much like we're going to be seeing this over and over and over again. Lawsuits. When parts of an organization go in a way which is more progressive, particularly in the parts of America that are below the Mason-Dixon line, you're going to get pushback, and some very well-funded individuals are going to say, well, let's go to court, and we're just going to be going round and round in circles. And since the decision that was made in Dobbs, you've seen that there's been an emboldenment of being able to bring these lawsuits. Whether they will actually stand up and whether they get all the way up to the Supreme Court is another thing. But it has given that impression that, yes, we're now free to go and do these things because the old order has been tipped on its head. So where are we going? Are we going to have another schism in another church in Florida? Well, it's Florida. Well, of course we are. We're going to have more and more of these things in Florida. Florida man and Florida women are going to do what Florida man and Florida women do. They're going to go to court. They're going to go and end up arguing about the most ridiculous of things. But at the end of the day, we need to realize that this is not them arguing over anything other than Christian nationalism taking over in parts of America and using the court system to push that level of Christian nationalism. And I say that in a way that I'm seeing it through the lens of somebody who's outside of it and going, hang on a minute, you're trying to move in a slightly progressive way. So instead of that, you're going to break away and go even more extreme to the way that you were, create polarization and not do the one thing that we should all be doing, going, hang on a minute, why are they trying to go in this way and why don't they want to go in this way, as opposed to just going and just sitting in your own ecosystems and going, well, we don't need to listen to them now. And that's where I was getting from reading both of those articles.
Yeah, it's surprising to me the organization itself and the kind of intricacies of it, and like what they actually have to do, like legally speaking, to like break ties. And I mean, they technically have signed contracts, they have signed clauses that say if you want to leave, you got to do this. And again, that's something to me that just like it I know that it's basically always there with every single church out there, but when it comes to those, 100 some odd plus churches that are spread out across different states. It's always weird to remember that they are in fact tied together, and one of the biggest ways that they're tied together is through finances, and that's one of the big kind of sticking points for these churches that are talking about leaving. Like they have pension funds and so forth that are tied up with the organization as a whole, and these pastors and they're wanting that money. Is it their money? Is it not their money? I mean, technically, ties, blah blah blah. I think that's all particularly interesting. But I loved the way this one article ends, where it says, there's a quote from one of the people that is a part of this and is very much in support of it. And this person says, it's incredibly exciting. It's getting back to what the church was intended to be in the book of Acts. And this is the part that really stuck out to me. It's about preaching and teaching without huge administrative overhead and doing what we were meant to do as a church. This language is constantly used, right? This idea of, oh, we're just fighting for freedoms, oh, we just don't want such a large, overreach, of corporate, governmental blah blah blah, when in reality the reason that they're leaving is because a couple years ago the United Methodist Church had agreed upon some things, and these things were not things that these people like. And funny enough, it's being decent people and being inclusive to minority communities and trying to open arms and open doors and allow more people into this space. And that's what these 100+ churches are protesting. That's what they're against. They're against the idea of a trans preacher. Why? Why would you be upset by this? Of course, the answer is because their doctrine is something where they are actively hateful against trans people, against bi people, lesbians, gay. It doesn't matter. If they don't freaking like you, they're happy to take their toys and run away. Now I was raised Methodist, and this was something that for me wasn't particularly surprising, because when I was a part of the Methodist Church over a decade ago, it was obvious to me that ours was much more progressive and liberal in the vast majority of cases than when it came to, for instance, all the Baptist churches that my friend went to. And I'd go to their sermons every now and then. And one of the things that I definitely remember, even as a young kid, was noticing that there was a group of clearly more conservative and anti-LGBTQ and not really for helping out, economically disadvantaged people. There was that group that everybody kind of knew, and everybody was like, well, Bill, he's just a little bit more, old school than us. Again, of course, that old school is literally attempting to murder people in the streets. So not much of a fan of that school. But Richard, we've been talking for a bunch. What are your thoughts on this, man? You moving to Florida anytime soon, or?
No, I am not. And it's not just because of this. I don't like big bugs or alligators either.
Good point.
Look, this is an article of two parts, and one of it is, or it's a movement, should we say, of two parts. It's one that's intolerant, but it's not just the intolerance. This is largely, again, like the previous article was, about finances. And as with the very rich arm of the German Catholic Church in the previous article, the contention here is a financial one. It seems to be saying, feel free to fuck off, but don't take your money with you. Don't fuck off because you might take your money with you. There's just this consistent message that there's somewhere, regardless of denomination, that money is the center of it all. And this is really really winds me up. It was set out in 2019, as you mentioned, Secular. The article has to, if they want to move, they can move. That's not a problem, but they've got to make the correct payments, and that's what this is all coming down to. They've even got a book called a Book of Discipline, I think it was called, which really confused me, because the first part of the Vinaya Pitaka, the Buddhist Tipitaka, is called the Book of the Discipline in its English rendition. So that was confusing me as I was reading this all the way through. But they've got this Book of the Discipline, which laid out exactly what they had to pay if they wanted to move. And the long and the short of this article is that they're wanting to move without making those payments. And that's where all the suing is coming from. It's not because they want to go. They're quite happy for them to go. It's because they want to go without making these payments. And, there's a much more serious side to this. And this is what I wanted to link back to the first article. And it's this that I'm torn on. Because the reason Christianity has lasted so long is exactly because it has been rife with disagreement and schisms, since its very inception, as I mentioned before. So it's been its ability to change voluntarily or otherwise that has given it its longevity. Had we not had the author of the Gospel of John and others come along and reinterpret the Jesus doomsday cults, and it was evident that the Messiah wasn't coming back, which was the original teaching of Jesus, in the time frame Jesus foretold, then the fledgling Christian cults they'd have vanished long and long ago, and they'd been in a footnote in the pages of Jewish sects. And this leads on to why I'm torn, because I absolutely love that religious people are willing to reinterpret their texts in the name of tolerance and acceptance. Progressive Christians are teaching other Christians that it's okay to be gay, that women have an equal status to men, and loads of other wonderful things. But it's this very watering down of scriptural belief that allows the religion to continue at all. And that, for me, is the difficult balance. And here's why I'm going to go on a rant. I'm sorry, I was quiet for the first part, but now you've got to listen to me, unfortunately. Often religious people compartmentalize their religious belief from everyday belief. They use a different epistemological framework to justify God than to do anything else in their life. And that bad thinking seeps into society and allows a general standard of poor epistemology. If religious people fought more for education and for skepticism, for science literacy, then scammers, fraudsters, charlatans, and all the other bad people of the world would be less prone to be able to take advantage of people. Yeah. So yes, religious tolerance is a good thing, and that cannot be understated, but it should not be used as an excuse to avoid challenging religious people on bad thinking, on poor methodology, and on poor epistemology. And ultimately, a belief in God that bears no resemblance to the earliest depictions of El and Yahweh. And that is the long and short of things. Progression is good on one hand, but it's allowing the church to continue. Because let's face it, if we had a church that was still clasping to the earliest interpretations, that church would be gone, because there would be no place of it in this society.
That's a good
point.
And
that is why I'm torn, and it's a constant battle for me, this, and I know other people have the same thing, and I know other people are more happy with progressive churches. So just a quick throw out to you two, and what you two think about that kind of whether schisms are a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah, Phoebe.
It reminds me of the man what Richard was talking about. It reminds me of the man who spent a year following the Bible literally. So he would throw his wife out when she was on her period, and he wouldn't, cut his beard, and he would
no shrimp,
goat, no shrimp.
Yeah,
and
rough stuff.
He showed it to be the farce of well, modernity has moved on from, throwing women out and, no blades by your face, etc. And if we didn't have schisms, we didn't have progressiveness, the religions would still be you chuck a woman out on her period, you don't eat shrimp, etc., etc., etc. So in a way, they are good, but it's the way that they are gone about that is the problem here. You have people here who have too much of an insecurity problem with themselves, going, I don't like anything that challenges my worldview and upsets my apple cart in any way, shape, or form. They don't like seeing a change in any way, shape, or form whatsoever. Someone's come along and has just simply suggested a new paint on the wall, and they've gone, no, I'm burning the house down. Now you've come along and I'm going to burn the house down. Goodbye now. You wanted this shade of white, but I wanted this shade of white. I'm going to burn the house down. It feels very much like we're sitting through a Monty Python sketch of the People's Front of Judea and the Judean People's Front. You are allegedly both under the umbrella of Methodism. Allegedly. If you are actually under the umbrella of Methodism, then you should be following the doctrines of Methodism. And if you want to be part of how Methodism progresses, then you should use the structures. You have voluntarily entered into these agreements and you've voluntarily chosen to follow the Book of Discipline, etc. To turn around now and go, I have no earthly idea that this was going to be it. It's quite frankly a ridiculous absurdity. And we see it in Britain with certain things that have been going on in Britain where it's like upping sticks and leaving without paying and then turning around and then wondering why court cases turn up. And it's just a madness to turn around and go, well, okay, I'll happily go and enter into this contract until I don't like it. Oh, I don't like what I've actually signed up to. It's going to bite me in the backside. Run away now, and we start playing Benny Hill music.
As long as they're taking their cash with them, that's what they want.
And their property.
That's right. They want those pews. Do you know how expensive those are? No, Richard, I think exactly the same struggle you have in this moment is the same one that I have. Because the section of the United Methodist Church that is not breaking away, right? I would say I would prefer that version, right? As somebody that comes from it from a secular humanist perspective, I would prefer, if we have to have believers, which I don't really know that we can ever completely get rid of religion, right? But if we have to have them, I kind of want the people that are more progressive and more in line with like human rights and stuff, you know? The issue for that is again, exactly what you said. This is the only reason that these ideologies have stuck around, or one of the biggest reasons these ideologies have stuck around, is the fact that they can go through this whole process, read the book over and over and over, see how it is incredibly sexist, let's say, or incredibly racist, let's say, just off the top of my head, not pointing at anything in particular, but and they just kind of explain it away. And again, where they land on that is a place that so many of us are like we're on freaking board. Heck yes, like absolutely. We want you on our side. It seems like you're not going to be shoving your Christian nationalism down our throat or praying at the middle of football games, privately, of course, privately. But I don't know. Just like with the German church, I guess I'm kind of hoping that this will loosen the grip on some areas, but at the same time, again, this is pretty focused on the cash flow. So I even if they do just leave, right? At this point, there's probably been enough media attention that you're gonna find, a handful of large far right, Christian benefactors that that are still going to kind of stand up and start filling the coffers again. So I want this to be progress. I guess I'm a little, I've been hurt in the past by stuff like this, y'all. There have been times before where I felt as if the church was moving in a good direction, and then they snatched it back right when I was getting used to it. Richard, what are your final thoughts on this? And we'll have Phoebe take us out.
Yeah, as much as progress is being made in some of these quarters, at the end of the day, they're still working from the same book, and the book still contains all the racist and homophobic and sexist shit that it did to begin with. Because you can't. They're not rewriting it; they're reinterpreting it, and that stuff's still in there. And the amount of people that I've spoken to who are just totally unaware that some of that stuff's in there. We have a liturgical, I can't speak, calendar in the church where the same shit is recycled on a 3-year basis. You don't go to church and learn the Bible. You go to church to learn the cherry-picked nice parts of the Bible. And that's the way it is, and that's the way it's probably always going to be. So this is something that, as I've said and that Secular said, I'm torn on. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? The main article seems to be about money again, sadly. And that's another thing that churches are going to come down to, especially these super rich ones, is, you're taking my money away from me. Is there an answer to it? I'm not sure. I think I must get on my high horse and shout the same thing I shout every episode of the non-profits: education, education, education. That's the best we can do. And while we've got a voice, that's why I'm here. I'm guessing that's why you two are here, is to educate people on the shit that they don't know. And, and hopefully that'll get through to some of those people and we'll have a better world overall.
Phoebe, take us out.
To conclude on this, there are 3 ways of looking at this. Mega churches and enormo things that our churches are unwieldy, and like the Catholic Church in the previous articles and in the previous segment, become unable to be in any meaningful way governed. But then again, you have ever smaller and ever decreasing sizes where you end up with the Westboro Baptist Church of people. So there has to be some way of looking at, well, okay, when does this become ungovernable? And when does this just become, well, a sect? But what we're missing here is that the church is fighting itself. And in my opinion, we should let it fight itself and waste its resources and show itself up as this infighting nonsense and just leave them to it. Whilst we're getting on with actually fighting for human rights, whilst we're actually getting on with the fight for education. If they want to, tie themselves up in legal action forever and a day, be my guest. I'm not going to join you. I'm not going to, sue the Church of Atheism because I want to go and sue, break away and become the Atheism Church. It's madness. They want to go ahead and do that, be my guest. You want to waste your money doing that, be my guest. You want to clog the courts up like that, feel free. I'm not going to stop you. But when does it become that they're actually starting to impact on society by clogging the courts up, by clogging up the banking system and stuff? And there needs to be a way of balancing this out. But for the moment, I'm buying popcorn.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, especially right now. I am all for various religious organizations focusing on fighting in amongst themselves rather than continuing to destroy the wall of separation of church and state in our government. So, but with that, I think we all need a breather. So if you didn't tune in to any of the other ACA shows this week, well, here's what you missed.
Maybe I'll use that phrase a lot, but it's important to stress you're normal. whatever it is, no matter how it hangs or dangles or smells or whatever else, it's normal, it's beautiful.
He goes to heaven and he gets to live forever, whereas Anne Frank, who never came to understand Christ as her Lord and personal Savior, burns forever in a fire. Is that perfect justice? Because if it is, perfect justice can go itself.
Feel free to give me some praise hands, ladies. For whatsoever thy soul lusteth after, for sheep or wine, or for strong drink, thou shalt eat there before the Lord thy God. So there you have it, folks.
Amen.
The Bible says grab some beers.
Atheists go to outer darkness. It's a place worse than hell.
Frank, why on earth should anybody believe that this is a real place?
Kenneth, you're going to go to Valhalla when you die.
I'd like to go to Cancun or something. You know,
Yeah, way
but
cooler.
really, very polite, well-groomed people are gathering in temples as we speak with all of their kids, and they believe that Joseph Smith was a prophet. What happens if you get to heaven and heaven is full of Mormons?
And we are back. And Phoebe, you're a fan of pedantry, I think. What's going on over in Texas with some word changes or something? What's happening?
Why don't you just set fire to the dictionary in Texas? I think that's the best thing that they could have done. It's just, So, Texas and its bigot-in-chief who runs round calling himself Greg, but, that may be subject to change depending on, the wind or something. They have gone and decided that, let's not use the word slavery when we're dealing with second graders. We're going to use the phrase involuntary relocation. This really annoys me. I mean, it genuinely annoys the backside off of me because involuntary relocation is what happened in things like the Trail of Tears, when many, many, many tribes were forcibly marched across, large swathes of, continental Southern America. Really great that was. So we're going to conflate the Trail of Tears with the theft and indentured servitude of people against their will. They've really thought this one through. And it just feels like another one of these ridiculous, nonsensical attacks on progress and understanding of points of view that you dislike. In Texas and in Florida and in the wider anti-progress movement, they're using the same kind of language. Oh, we need to protect the children because they're not ready for it yet. We hear that against LGBT people. We need to protect the children from the groomers. We need to protect the children from the nastiness because they're not ready to understand it. Talk about infantilization of people who are younger than you just because you yourself have got this point of view. And I'd like to talk about the Texas Tribune article to start with, because this was one of the weirdest articles I have read in a very long time. Because the article, as far as I can read it, isn't aimed at the general public. It's aimed at somebody like me, a trained lawyer. It's aimed as if it's going to be sitting on the desks of law firms, political action committees, super PACs, and campaign groups. And there's a problem with the article. It's very good for that audience, but it's not written by a lawyer. It's written by a journalist who is bored out of their skull with this because they've been covering it forever and a day and it just won't go away. It feels like someone's taken away the football from the football game and they've said, okay, now write about the football game. Whereas instead we should be having like a good chess boxing match where we're going in and throwing punches and going, this is ridiculous, but still giving that meaty substance for the brain to clamp down on, to go, oh, this is why it's wrong, and these people are completely bonkers. So note to myself, Don't buy the Texas Tribune. It says dollars paint drying. But this is where we've got to with Texas. They have come down with their elected, I repeat, with their elected boards of education, taking information from advisory groups that are basically going around and saying, we need to have some censorship here, a bit more censorship there, a bit more censorship around there, and we're going to dress it all up like it's coming from a place of concern. They said that about segregation. We need to protect the children from the scary non-white people. And when are we going to break this cycle? And we need to understand what's really going on here. The words matter here. And the words matter an awful lot here. Because if you start going, oh, it's involuntary relocation. No, it was slavery. Those are two different things. And it feels very strange to have anybody in an educational position go, ooh, we need to, dumb down because I don't like it. I don't want children to, think that I could be wrong. And I wonder what you two think about that.
Yeah, I'm going to. This is going to sound really bizarre. I want to be fair to the Texas School Board here because it's easy to jump on the Texas School Board for being gargantuan idiots. They have given us enough examples of it, as we've discussed many, many times on the nonprofits. But here there does seem to be a legitimate undercurrent that they weren't only discussing slavery, but transition into the country in general. And that, on its own, would have been fine. The problem was that they decided to include slavery in there, and that specifically that they wanted to redefine slavery into involuntary relocation. And that, for the benefit of any members of the Texas School Board who might be listening, categorically is not fucking okay. The fact that it's rejected is not okay, and that may sound like I'm defending them somehow, but it's not okay only on the basis that it should never, ever, ever have been suggested to begin with. There shouldn't have even been an opportunity to reject it. And there was, and that's why this is not okay. This is not language. This is not a redefinition that belongs in this century. And, kudos to this Texas School Board. When it was suggested, it was thrown out immediately. But that here is not the point. The fact that it was suggested to start with is the point. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, I think you brought up a lot of good points, both of you, honestly. There is yet again the through line, I feel, where people are out there shouting, talking about all the terrible things that CRT is doing, all the terrible things about being affirmative when it comes to or providing affirmation for students who are part of the LGBTQ community. The people that are against that seem to me like they are so uncomfortable with who they are. And they are so uncomfortable with the ideology that they have to go this fucking far. It is so clearly obvious. Just take just a little bit of look, folks. Just a little bit of look. If anybody out there is watching this or listening to this on podcast and you are at all confused about the slavery in the United States, happened for a really long time, I promise you, it doesn't take very long before you go, wait a second. It's not as if they're just picking people up and moving them to a different city and saying, well, all right, have a good time now, do your thing. No, they are beating people. They are murdering people. They are actively ripping apart families. This was not, you were a commodity. You were not a human being. And the idea that we would even come close to this, I agree, Richard, is so freaking frustrating. My initial off the cuff response probably had more expletives than I should. So what I will do is just point out one of the school board members, which, by the way, the school board did unanimously reject this, and that is good. But again, kind of like what Richard said, never should have been on the fucking table. But one of the school board members, their comment was, I don't know if that's a fair representation of what we should be saying about that journey. And like, oh my, yeah, fuck yeah, right? I also thought what you were talking about, Phoebe, when it came to this, once again, trying to couch this bigoted and hateful ideology with this shiny, pretty, oh, we just want to protect the children. Fucking quit it. Children are not some subgroup, subcategory to just be played with and done with what we fucking want as adults. That's bullshit. Start treating kids like they are going to be the future leaders of this country and the world, because that's what they are, folks. Like, I get it. We shouldn't sit down with a 5-year-old and explain the absolute gory, horrific details, but for fuck's sake, like, stop pretending as if children are not able to look around them and see things. They see bigotry. They see hatred. They see adults that are going out of their way to try to marginalize other groups of people. They are seeing this, and that is giving them the thought that, hey, maybe this is the right way to act. And it just freaking isn't. If we do not teach the next generation, how in the fuck are we going to be spared from the horrible consequences that we have already received? Truly, it again, I was glad that they rejected it, at least. I mean, I'm trying to find something positive here. That was good that they did not take this on, right?
But one of the board members, Pat Hardy, said, as a result of the SBOE voted unanimously to send the language back to be reworked, this board is committed to the truth, which includes accurate descriptions of historical events. And I've just, that fucking, the amount of times we've come across the Texas school board, and I've got to take that with a pinch of salt. This is a school board. I'm going to call bullshit. Seriously, it went to court, considered teaching creationism as a theory alongside evolution. I've got to applaud them for rejecting this ridiculous and racist suggestion unanimously. I do, however, think that they should be seriously, very seriously consider whether whoever it was who made the suggestion, and I don't think the article actually tells us that, but whoever made that section to begin with, are they suitable for their position, or should they remain on the board? Because in my view, that person should be out the door and bye-bye and don't come back again.
It was an advisory committee that advises the school board. So it was an outside, entity that feeds into the school board. But just put it this way, it could be
the Ku
worse.
Klux Klan.
It could be worse. It could be worse. We could be going back to the days that Kansas put evolution on trial.
Yeah.
We could be going back to those days where they actually held in court hearings about evolution, and they took evidence and stuff, and it was like they had a jury and a judge and everything. It was fairly absurd. No, not fairly absurd. It was fucking round the bend. It was ludicrous. And this is another one of those ludicrous, nonsensical, round the arsehole, absolute dog shite things that is coming once again out of the Lone Star State, being fed down from the very top of the organizational structure that is the Texas State House, the Texas Legislature, the Texas courts, and the electorate of Texas don't have anything really that they can get their teeth into at the moment. It feels like we are looking at a state that it decided to turn itself inside out and is now looking out of its own sphincter rings because it has lost all perspective and has lost the complete sight of what reality is. Reality is slavery was the ownership of people as property. It wasn't, oh, I'm just going to help you move house and we're just not going to give you the house. It wasn't that. It was, hello, I'm going to take you from Africa, put you on a ship, going to see a load of people die, just chuck them overboard, and then we're going to make you work to death. I, as a Jewish woman, would have a lot more ancestors if slavery hadn't happened in Europe in the 1940s. So this is one of the most ridiculous and offensive things to ever come out of the backside of vomit that is Texas at the moment.
And my state, being Tennessee, we look to Texas's school board. When things are going down in the Texas school board, and it's not just my state. There are lots and lots and lots of states that wait for Texas's school board to adopt a ruling, add a policy change some fucking words around. They wait for that, and then they say, yes, that's what we'll do. We'll fall in line with that. And, even if that wasn't the case, this is still so fucking ridiculous to me that, again, for the sake of our wonderful crew here at the ACA, I will keep my initial thoughts when I heard this. Hadn't even read the damn article, and I probably had about 12, maybe 13 cuss words in and not many prepositions or anything else. But Richard, any other thoughts on this?
Yeah, I just want to finish up to say that, and I'm going to crucify her name, and I do apologize to her, but Iro Amare, or Amir, a Democratic candidate for Congress of Texas's 4th district, called this proposal disgraceful, and she hit the nail on the head when she said, we have come to the point now that we must hold the Texas Education Agency and the State Board of Education accountable for the deliberate miseducation of Texas children. And that is brilliant. And I'd just like to point out that we have been saying this on the nonprofits for months and months and months and months. And it's nice to see that we're having some influence and that the politicians are finally catching up. These are supposed to be the leaders, not the followers. And to see that at least some of them are following our lead is a good thing.
Yeah. Phoebe, what are your thoughts?
Texas. Where do I start?
Yeah. We I don't know if we have that much time for all of it. But
all I will say on this proposal, gas prices may have hit $5 a gallon. But I'll happily pay $5 for 1 gallon to set fire to this proposal so that it never sees the light of day ever again. This is the epitome of Texas shite and should never, ever, ever rear its ugly head again.
Yeah.
Now, go away, Texas Board of Education and the Texas Education Authority, and reflect. Why are you so rammed up your own backsides that you cannot see the idiocy of the optics of this?
They haven't watched enough nonprofits episodes, I think, is the problem, y'all. I think that's part of it.
I think that is it, yeah, pretty much.
By the way, if you are watching the nonprofits now when this premieres or in the future, did you know you can become a member of the channel? For as little as 99 cents a month, you just click that join button below the video, and this will give you access to special chat emojis. I believe at some point in the future we might have Richard's face down there. So who doesn't want to throw that in the chat? But also, we have a brand new store, folks. Just visit tiny.cc/merch ACA, and you can get your favorite items like t-shirts, hoodies, and coffee mugs. You can even check out some of the newer stuff we've got, like beanies, phone cases, and tote bags. And all of the ACA shows feature a special limited edition item each month. So be sure to go check out that store for the NP merch and then all the merch from the other shows as well. So there is some great stuff up there, folks.
I'm waiting for the non-profits teapot. That's what I'm waiting
Ooh,
for.
the nonprofits teapot. We're gonna have to. I don't know. You Brits always wanting your tea and stuff. We'll see if we can talk to somebody. Look, if you're out there and you're thinking about a nonprofits teapot, why don't you put it in the comments? Let us know your thoughts. With all that, we're gonna take a step in the right direction. Because for this next segment, we're finding out that One American News Network has been officially dropped by their last major TV carrier. So what's going on here is that initially OANN, or One American News Network, generally touted by many as a quote far right conspiratorial network. Well, apparently Verizon Fios could not come to an agreement with them to continue their contract. Now, what was it exactly about the contract? I don't know. They didn't say. But it seems to be from Verizon's own statement that this wasn't as if they, again, suddenly woke up and realized that this network is a bunch of bigots spouting hate and actively calling for violence against others. I would have preferred that, but at least, hey, it's not going to be carried by Verizon anymore, which is good, I think. I don't believe that the right call is to actively be promoting these types of networks that have no problem distorting facts, have no problem just pushing a clear and obvious agenda. One of which that there are lots and lots of things that I think are very problematic with. One thing that really jumped out to me on this, though, is that there actually is already some other places that you can find this network. And even in the notes, I kind of struggled with this as to whether or not we should highlight these platforms that you can find OAN on. They are little known digital platforms. And I don't know if the right call is to make more people aware so that they like go and protest, or just really try to just not talk about them at all so that they just kind of fade into the background. But this, again, for me, I think this is something that is good. I don't know. I never know in these situations, when we take these hateful things and we put them into the shadows. I don't know if that's the best thing. I can tell you, if I ran some type of platform like this, I would absolutely not be allowing this type of network on. The other article that we have, though, is about the Truth Social app and how it's been having trouble in the past and still to this day with a lot of techie, sciencey, codey, computery stuff. I'm pretty sure that's the right term. But when Truth Social first started, they, Amazon web service, and they basically came out and said, hey, we're not really gonna let you do this, and we don't want you on our platform. Again, something that I think is the right call. But this has actually been something that has plagued a lot of these types of networks. And not only this, but also, and I think they kind of even talk about it a little bit, but just in general, just getting any type of computer engineer, coder, whatever, to kind of help out on the back end of these sites. That has been a struggle for a lot of these hardcore right-wing places like this. And again, I gotta be honest, I'm not super bummed out by that. I'm glad that collectively or individually or both or whatever it is, but the people that are more computer minded than I am have all kind of said, we don't really like your stuff, bro. and then they have not helped them. That has led to a good couple of pretty major hacks on some of these websites and so forth. But before we go too far, Phoebe, what do you think about all of this? Is this good? Is this bad? What are you feeling?
I'm all for plurality of voices around the table. But my biggest takeaway from the Verizon deal was it was just, straight up economics. That's what it was. It was just economics. And here's the thing that America is built on. America is, the largest capitalist country going. And it's going to eat you alive in the commercial world. Both OANN and Truth Social will just be eaten alive by the market. If you're not commercially viable, no one has an obligation to carry you, no matter who they are.
Good point.
And if you're not prepared to, abide by the terms and conditions, as long as they're lawful terms and conditions, then guess what? You're going to get eaten alive. You can't go around demanding special treatment, and you can't go around demanding that people bow down just because there needs to be plurality at the table. It's all very nice. You have the right to freedom of speech protections from the government. What you don't have the right to demand that private organizations platform you. There are FCC obligations on common carriage. That's lovely. But that doesn't mean that you have a right to have your product on certain large distributors of cable or satellite television. It's just the way the world works. And if you don't want to use Amazon Web Services, that's your choice. But you live with the consequences, and you get eaten by the market, and you get eaten by those consequences. You have these choices, but these choices aren't consequence free. So, you don't want to pay? Then guess what? Verizon will well within their rights to say, ta-da! You don't want to use Amazon Web Services? Guess what? Do it yourself.
Yeah,
Richard?
it was a purely business decision on the part of Verizon, and that I think takes the edge off it for me just a little bit. And the article told us that it's the other aspects of this story that are the most shocking, rather than the business decision made by Verizon, and that is namely the lies and the abuse the channel has gone to in order to try and save itself. They told us, the article told us, that the network has been peddling rumors that Elon Musk was going to buy the network, and Elon Musk
went, nope,
got that down straight away, and it's been urging its viewers to dig up dirt on executives of companies that have dropped the network. They are in the shit, as we say in Britain. And they're now under the impression that their future is making online content. And they're hoping that this will go viral. But it's not looking good. It's really, really not looking good for them. And that is, it just speaks to the shit that they're producing. You've got a country that's got the Texas school board making crap decisions. And even that country is saying to them, all the businesses are saying, no, you're too far for even us to carry. And that is a good thing. Let's hope it carries on in this direction.
Just to follow on from that, Richard, instead of them going viral, they're going to become a meme, and they're going to just be laughed at.
Let's hope so.
Yeah, because I agree that the edge does kind of come off a little bit, because it was purely about the contract. It was purely about, monetary gain for these services, basically. And it makes me worried that the sentiment that is expressed on these types of platforms is still prevalent in our society. But I'm glad that it's not in a place where it can be perpetuated in such a degree. I don't know what the right call is on all of this, because again, one of the things that worries me is if we don't allow some type of light on these horrible, disgusting ideas so that we can call them horrible, disgusting, bigoted, transphobic, homophobic, sexist pieces of shits that are, I may have gone off a little there, but the point is that if we don't have pushback on these types of ideas, do they grow? Do they strengthen in numbers and ideology? And I don't know 100%, but this definitely feels to me like it is a step in the right direction. So I am glad to see this, and I'm glad to see that at least some of the content online will be less shit, and maybe we can get back to more cat videos. So Phoebe, what you want to wrap us up, and Richard, we'll hear your thoughts too.
It's lovely sometimes to see that, as you say, the edge is being taken off because it's not being done for anything other than monetary reasons. But it is lovely to just sometimes go, you've been just eaten by the market. Ta-ta! Oh, your own decisions are coming back to bite you. Oh, I won't lose any sleep. As we say in Britain, get stuffed, mate. You made these choices. Now fuck off.
We may have to bleep some of that just across the
Yeah.
pond. I think it'll be fine. Richard, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, overall, things don't look like they're going tremendously well for right-wing media platforms. And I would think that their own arrogance is probably having a lot to do with that. It wouldn't surprise me one little bit if they tried twisting this into some kind of grand conspiracy. That just seems to be their MO when things don't go the way. I mean, you only have to look at the great orange one to see that. It's another one of those. We've had a couple of these today where it's let's watch this space, but it is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think that's a fine sentiment for us to close out on. But the good news, folks, is that even though this episode's over, you can still hang out with us because you can join our fan social media outlets. You can find most of the Nonprofits host on the atheist community of Discord by just going to tiny.cc/ACD Discord and on Facebook at tiny.cc/FBNP. And if you'd like to support the show, you can do so by becoming a patron at tiny.cc/PatreonNP. And if you already find yourself shopping at Amazon, you can support the atheist community of Austin by shopping at smile.amazon.com and selecting the atheist community of Austin as the beneficiary. Be sure to use that link because it really helps out the ACA, and we really appreciate it, y'all. And then, of course, we value your feedback. We want to hear what you like, what you don't like. You can just post them in those comments below, or you could email us at nonprofits@atheist-community.org. And also make sure to visit the ACA's official website at atheist-community.org so you can find out all the latest of what's been happening here at the organization and on the various shows. And hey, feel free to contact us if you want. tv@atheist-community.org. So all easy ways to do it. And like I said, you can keep the fun still rolling if you want to. But y'all, we're pretty much at the end. Phoebe, did you have any final thoughts for us?
America. In Britain, we say this, and this has never been truer, having recorded this episode of the Nonprofits with the two of you. Only in America would you find what we discussed tonight.
So true. Richard, what are you thinking?
Yeah, this has been an interesting episode because usually we have a train of thought which runs through, and we've had a bit of a mixed bag tonight. So it's been interesting to delve in all these different things. I'm just going to repeat my mantra, which I think I'm contractually obliged to do now, and just shout education, education, education. It's obvious that we need education. We need to get that. We need more science literacy. We need more skepticism. And, we need people to stop compartmentalizing the religious beliefs from their other everyday beliefs. And I'm never going to stop shouting that. I'm sorry if it gets boring for the viewers, but that's my bag, and that's what you're stuck with when you get me on the show.
No, I think it's great. And it's truly been so much fun hanging out with both of y'all. And for my final thoughts before we leave, I know we've got religious viewers out there. I know we've got people that hang out with us, and they are part of some faith system, some stripe of it. And I think there's a good handful of them that have seen some of these, the Vatican Church not trying to be more inclusive, the Methodist Church trying to be more inclusive, and then a large group of them, pulling away and stuff. And to all of those out there that are in that camp where they see what their church is doing, and they see the lack of progress, or the stranglehold that these organizations are having on our government and human rights. You are better than that religion. You are, because you disagree with that horrible garbage that we have seen in so many of these articles. And honestly, you're better without it. So thanks so much, everybody, for hanging out with us, and we'll see you next time.
Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242, or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.